philosophy matters.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jack Lloyd here. I'm just coming to you to hang on out and to talk a little bit more about the Ripperverse, specifically kind of piggybacking off of the Dokumaan's archives here, because I think these cards kind of give a little bit of a sense of the universe, the Ripperverse universe, and I think that there's a lot that we can actually glean from them and get a sense of what's coming up. So I wanted to actually take a look again at these cards and talk through some of the possibilities of what's going on. And if you haven't already seen the box, it is a super cool box. They did a great job, as you can see here, of designing this box. It makes it all custom. So it says here, return now or be annihilated. It says over here, opening equals your destruction. So they had a lot of fun with designing this. And then on the back, it says, why are you looking at the bottom of this box? The secret intel is inside. So, opening up this the box here again, and I did open this already for the unboxing. So I just have everything out. I have the original bags. I guess I'll just keep that just in case. But I have all the cards here, and I wanted to actually think through a little bit more of the cards themselves and the lore, and kind of think about what the Ripperverse might actually be entailing in terms of what kind of dynamics are going on. So the first card here, right, with Isom, it clearly is a series that I think is rooted in Eric July's history, and the reason why is that the events taking place are in Texas, where Eric July is from. So the birthplace of Isom is in Flores Park, Texas. And he's 6 feet, 200 pounds, which makes you wonder, I think Eric is himself about 6 foot, maybe 6'1" tops. I don't know. I've stood next to him a couple times, and I'm 5'10", and he's always been just a little bit taller than me. So I think, I think the actual height and size might be pretty close to what Eric July's real life self is. And so if you look here on the back, they did a really cool job of kind of putting together these character card information pieces here, and they got Dokumaan at the bottom. And someone had mentioned to me that the Dokumaan kind of ambiance, the character development for how they're presenting him seems almost like the Watchers in Marvel. So this idea of a kind of a special being that is watching over the universe and making commentary, but not really interjecting except in an emergency situation or something, intriguing like that. So I don't know. Is Dokumaan going to be like the Watchers from Marvel? Maybe. But the way that he talks about it, with the power observation, Dokumaan says, I do not know what his powers actually are. What I do know is that he's very strong, has only gotten stronger. So that kind of open-endedness to the character, I think, is really interesting, because you have to keep everybody wondering what Isom's powers are going to ultimately be. And I think that's a wise decision. I do that with Voluntarius too, with my own comic series. There's certain things you might see in terms of powers. I even have some of the power sheet information, like just some of the generalities of Voluntarius powers on the website, but it's not immediately all developed in the comic, because there's lots of unveiling in terms of how the power actually works, its dynamics, its strengths, weaknesses, or things that have to be honed. So I think that was wise to not just spill the beans on the entirety of Isom and to allow there to be some ambiguity. But obviously, from just reading Isom, the issue number 1 here, which again, here's the cover, the A cover, which is a beautiful cover. I think they did a good job on that one. Just reading through that gives you a sense that he does has some type of physical strength. We don't see him flying or anything like that, but he definitely is strong. So I think that's going to be something that they're going to eventually kind of flesh out, like many stories where you don't exactly know what they do, but eventually over time, through the actual actions in the series, you learn what it is. So, all right. So let's take a look here at this other character card, Santuan. So Santuan here, as I mentioned last time, he's a big dude. You can see right there, it says that he's height 6'7", weight at least 500 pounds. birthplace unknown, but he lives in Flores Park, Texas. So Flores Park is definitely the hot and popping place to be in this story for sure. And he's an except for hire. So he's working for, it says in the back of this card, Darren Fontano. So, not too much in terms of spoilers here, but, it is in the first issue talking about this character and kind of develops some of what he's doing based on his interactions with Isom. So the power observation that's given in the back with Dokumaan is that, to his knowledge, his power is brute strength. One of the greatest feats I've witnessed from him is dragging an operable tank that belonged to the Texas military. And so what's interesting about that, in terms of the power dynamic listings here, is that this dragging of the tank is not in the first issue, right? So already that's something that's additional to the actual release that's in here. So we're already hearing something that's not even in that comic. So it does make you wonder, okay, how does Dokumaan actually know this? So again, it's one of those kind of like Watcher things. It's, starts to make you think about what his role is. And it says that the tank belonged to the Texas military. So this is really interesting, I think, in terms of the story, because the fact that they say Texas military and not Texas National Guard, to me, indicates that Texas might be an independent state or like a nation state in the story. I'm starting to think that this might be something in a post secession environment where Texas is operating as its own country essentially. So of course that would tie into Eric July's constant promotion of secession, which would be interesting. And I would love that, of course, personally. I would love to see that he actually incorporates that. That'd be freaking, I think, a great storyline. But it's not, outright said. But the fact that it just says Texas military, to me, is kind of indicating that maybe there is something about secession in the story that's going to come up, or it's going to be a backdrop that, led up to this moment in time. So here I have a Darren Fontano. And in this character card, interestingly enough, he's 6 foot, but only 190 pounds. So he's a little bit more lean. He's, of course, also from Flores Park, Texas. And I think what's interesting about his character here is that in the power observation, it says the local police let him do whatever he wants. The local politicians praise him as if he's a humanitarian. So the fact is that Eric July has created in this character here someone who is basically a type of mafioso, I think. So I think that ties a bit to Eric July's history, with gang stuff and stuff on the streets. Basically, I think it's kind of a personal history nod to that type of environment. So there's not as much in terms of the general universe here, except the idea that at least in this town, Flores Park, this fictional town, this character Darren is basically kind of running the city through maybe corrupt means. All right, let's take a look here at Yaira. Boom. Yeah, this has been one of the more favorited characters in terms of what people, like out there, and the artwork and the design and stuff like that. She is a cool looking character for sure. So you can see here, here's the back of that card. So you can get it in focus. Right, so she's big too. 6'3", 215 pounds. So she's stacked. She's a big girl. And it says that the birthplace of her is unknown, but she can't be from Earth, right? So I was talking about this last time, how this character definitely has to allude to something, with there being aliens or something from outer space. So this is not a story that is just limited to Earth for sure. This is a story that appears to have a broader scope of where characters can come from and different events. It's, while obviously they're dealing with things on Earth, clearly the characters are doing or coming from places outside of Earth. The power observation that's listed here is when her powers are activated, her hair and fingertips turn bluish. She has a constant whirlwind that surrounds her, which could explain her flight. Icicles seem to grow from her pores. So that's a good question, right? If there's icicles growing from pores, is the blue stuff actually energy, or is it there's something that's ice related, like with the freezing things? It's tough to know exactly. I think, from what we've seen artwork so far, she definitely has, some type of what looks like energy around her, not just something that's, icicle or, cold or ice or something like that. So I think this is a good character preview because we don't see anything in the comic, that expressly says where someone comes from, from outside the planet. We don't actually see that. So this gives us that allusion to there being things, much bigger outside of Earth. And Dokumaan also says here that he's seen her kill small armies of men, yet doesn't seem evil. So killing small armies, where? I don't know. Is that on Earth? Is that somewhere else? I don't know. But we're going to find out soon enough. All right. I'm going to go through the futuristic police-looking people next. Okay. So here we have the Brian Solari card. So Brian Solari here, I'll pull the back so it's nice and clear. As you can see, he's also, I'll cover my face a little bit so it focuses in. He's a stacked dude, 6'4", 245 pounds, born in the Village, Texas. So again, everything's centered around Texas. So he's the leader of the Alpha Corps. And I think this is where we get an actual sense of what might have happened to, have Flores Park be this kind of independent place. It says that he is a veteran of the Great War of Separation. Now, not secession, separation, but let's be real. It definitely sounds like it's a war of secession, it's a war of separation, right? So I'm thinking so far, the evidence is starting to stick out that Texas or Flores Park, Texas, at least part of the whole, seem to have been a part of some type of war of, a civil war that involves separation / secession. So I definitely think that we're going to see in the future something that talks to this or speaks to why this war took place. Might even have an anthology about that history, a kind of like a prequel to Isom and what happened. I think that might be something that was intended by Eric, because where it starts off is him, of course, being kind of retired in a sense, but then coming back. So it's like that, they're starting at this new arc, but technically there's this whole room for a history too. So I think that was a smart move to be able to have something where you can go back in time and talk about the history. The power observation for him that Dokumaan says is, all I'm aware of is that he has incredible raw strength, the ability to fly. So far, that's been more than enough to get the job done. So strong, fly. So again, he has these certain powers, and we're not exactly sure how he got them per se. He's definitely some type of accept of sorts, and he, of course, recruits other people to it. So I'm just reading off the back. He's recruiting other people to his, I guess, kind of specialty police force. And it says here too that after the war, he settled in Flores Park, where he became the primary response agency for all threats that were accepts. So he's specifically part of a response team against superpowered humans or whatever else comes up. So that tells you another thing too, right? That maybe this war separation may have revolved around people who had special powers. I guess that's possible too, that maybe this war of separation or secession involved people who were superpowered themselves. All right, so we have here next Braxwell. Get this nice and close. See some of that cool detail. I mean, I will say, I do love the feel of these cards. Like they're very well made. The what do you call it? I gotta Google it because I'm gonna otherwise forget what it's called. So it's the technique / material that changes pictures. You turn it. Let me see here. Yeah, lenticular. That's what I meant to say. Lenticular printing. So lenticular printing is what format they used to make these. So that's what it's called, lenticular. So it's when you have something where it's, as you shift it along, it kind of feels 3D, and you use multiple images to do that. So it's just a cool feeling card. So Braxwell here, as you can see up top, 5'10", a little smaller, 170 pounds, Flores Park as well. And he's a more silent member of the Alpha Core. And you can see there the power observation that he possesses the ability to fly at speed that even rivals his colleague, Brian Solari. His raw strength isn't particularly special, but does have tremendous durability. So his being a part of the group, the Flores Park Police Force, was the creation of the Alpha Core. So again, he's essentially a cop with superpowers. And it says he's a local kid with aspirations of being a cop. So we have this kind of idea that, policing in this new post-war separation with special people called Excepts time has to have special cops that, are able to handle the different powers of other people who are Excepts. All right. And now we have Ingrid Valdez. She's the third person shown in that Alpha Core. And those whips are kind of cool and fun. They do remind me a little bit of Yaira's powers in a sense. And as you can see here on the back, she's 5'8", 150 pounds, so a lot smaller. Although it's still pretty stacked, right? 150, even if you're 5'8", for a woman, she got some thickness. You know what I mean? She ain't slacking. So she's a former power lifter. Well, there you go, right? This woman is no slouch physically. So she's strong. She was handpicked by Braxwell to join the Alpha Core. And the power observations here, it says that the public calls her a wirecaster, able to extend green color energy. She depends on this ability not just for various attacks, but for traversal as well. So she is able to move around, I guess, using these energy whips or wires, even though she can't exactly fly. So it's giving you a sense that a lot of, at least from what we've seen so far, a lot of what is Except power appears to at least deal with strength, durability, that kind of thing. It seems like Excepts have, at a bare minimum, some type of enhanced physical strength and, an ability to, resist damage to their bodies. It seems like that's kind of like the default power. Okay. So let's take a look here at two of the enemy cards we can go through. Okay, more Excepts. So we have Michael Copper. So I do like the green eye thing on him. I think that was a cool decision. And I like the color balance too that they had with this character. It's definitely something that I think is really intriguing. He's 6'1", 175 pounds. And he's finally someone not from Texas. He's from Tennessee, Central Tennessee. And he is attached to the person called Lillian Renash, who we'll look at next. And his power observation here, it says his eyes light up green and his powers related to his vision. I know that he can see great distances beyond certain barriers, but something tells me that isn't all he can do, right? So again, more mystery, more intrigue, leaving that up to you to want to discover what all he can do. So he's not romantically tied to the other character, to Lillian. He's somewhat of a business person. He doesn't need his partner, but he works there. So, and he's an incredibly talented fighter. So again, just enough to have some basic idea about him that, he's into business. There's some reason that he's doing business potentially, and he has a partner, and that partner is this character, Lillian Ronashi. Which, just saying here, between Michael and Lillian, I'm just saying, there's a potential here for Legal, Libertarian Guys, Asian Wives, just saying. Although they aren't romantically involved, but you never know. So there's Lillian Ronashi. And her birthplace is unknown, but she definitely ate a white chick, because it says her lineage traces back to Japan, right? So there you go. We got the old weeb shout outs there. So that's awesome. Hell yeah. And it says here that she's very observant and her powers seem to reflect that. With her magic, if that's what it is, I've watched her mold and project a very detailed layout of a building for visual purposes. So some type of energy caster, someone who can actually manipulate their energy into something. And it says that they don't know exactly where she's from, but she's with her partner, as we said before, Michael, and she goes city to city to obtain wealth and power. She is an accept, and they have settled in Flores Park. So obviously there's going to be some conflict there between her and Michael here and Darren Fontano. So obviously these two are some type of coupling that will lead to future conflict. I like this here. It says the Divine Doolittle says those cards look fire. Yeah, they are. I mean, I seriously, I love looking at people's work where, you know, they're successful and just be like, wow, like, you know, it makes you want to, you know, try to see what I can do in that realm. I've been looking into it. It is a pricey process, I say, to make these cards. From what I've seen, I think I found a company that might have even done what he did. But to even start with like making a batch of these, you need at least $1,000 down typically to like make a set of like just one card. And then there's, you know, the packaging science part, you know, that's involved. So it's serious business to like, you know, get these cards. It's not just like a one-off that you could print. You have to like batch order them typically, unless, I mean, you can go in Alibaba, but quality, right? You got, you know, if you're looking to make sure you have good quality control, you want the good stuff. So, all right. So we also have some more stuff. Oh, Lillian looks thick. Yeah. Thanks. Great Bliskin. Yeah, she does. She definitely got a little bit of curvature there for sure. And she also has purple hair. I couldn't help but think, because I was laughing the whole time just thinking about this, because like so much of what Eric July talks about is like all these SJWs who, you know, basically hate him and are always ragging on him. And like my first thought is like, okay, great. We have a girl with blue hair. We have a girl with purple hair. I don't know, you know. Are they going to come out and be like, you know, how dare you, Isom? You're so bigoted. But probably not, obviously. But it is funny to think about. All right. So we have now the characters that are part of this other arc. So, and they do have this arc in the comic book. They have it, you know, in Isom, you know, in the comic. So it's almost like its own standalone like mini issue at the end where they show these characters. It's kind of, you know, this kind of have a separation there at the end. So we'll talk about, there we go. Valadin first here. So these characters, I don't even fully know how they're going to be used personally. After reading the book, it's not entirely clear what it is that they're going to be or do. I think that maybe he was just setting it up for a future separate issue, even maybe. There could be crossover, but it just wasn't at least apparent to me that these characters are necessarily tied in with Isom. I think he just wanted to introduce the characters for possibly what will be another series. You know what I mean? Almost like you could have your own, you know, Green Arrow series or something like that, you know. And I do have the concept art book, so I do know that was part of the intent, is that these characters technically have their own kind of separate arc. So as you can see here, Valadin is a big dude, right? So let me see if I get this. There we go. 7 feet tall, weight unknown, birthplace Asgore. I mean, it does make me think of Asgard, but anyway, I'll take it. Asgore. And he does appear at the end with the other character in what appears to be almost like its own little mini comic within the book itself. So Dokumaan, this is from his perspective, says, when I first visited Earth, the stories of mythical and ancient lore fascinated me. So again, we also are seeing that Dokumaan, this character down there, clearly is not from Earth himself. So we definitely have this arc of there being extraterrestrial. So, you know, this story is definitely not limited to just Earth. There's more to it outside in outer space. It says here, when I first visited Earth, the stories of mythical and ancient lore fascinated me, most of them completely made up. But once I found out about the existence of Valadin, it confirmed that some are indeed beyond just tales. Okay, so that's also an interesting fact, too, that Dokumaan thinks that it would just be tales as opposed to being a norm, so that it almost seems like he has more limited knowledge himself, right? If he's thinking that, oh, I thought it was just tales, but now all of a sudden I see there's other beings that are, you know, real. So I must be one of the few beings who are aware of his true identity. The amazing thing is he's not hiding. He's currently the frontman of Norfolka and has been the most powerful voice, one of the most powerful voices in music. Their guitarist, Takari, is also special. Their powers often activate as they're performing, but people just think they are massive men using props on stage. Instead, these are gods that walk among regular people. Why are they here? Why are such distinctive beings touring the world as musical artists? So in the concept book, Eric July does talk about how he wanted to have something comic-wise that was going to be dealing with music and metal music too, because obviously backwards he likes doing that kind of rock, rap core. And I think that doing these characters was his way to kind of have a nod to his own musical fandom. So I don't know. It's like being from Asgore makes me automatically think, okay, is this something like Thor and Loki? Maybe. I don't know. You can't help but draw comparisons, but obviously they're playing music and their powers are definitely different. They're not like knockoffs or anything in that way. It just makes me think of those tropes, the characters from outer space from some ancient world that, is reminiscent of something like the Vikings or something like that, some like Nordic feel. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see what he ends up doing with that. If he ends up really going ahead and just making that a separate series right off the bat, gets like maybe another artist team to like run with it. Cause I don't see how you can reasonably do all these different characters and issues with just running with one artist team. There's no way. It's just, you can't produce that many pages in that time. Even if you have a really talented team, it's not realistic to be able to get that many issues. And that's why, most of your big companies obviously have different artist teams for different series, or sub-series within a group. You might have one artist team for a certain issue, and they may be getting like one comic a month at best. If you have a really good team, they might be getting out one issue a month. But I think these characters, if he is going to make them separate, unless he's going to just add it as a little like tag along at the end, will probably eventually get their own artist team to deal with their arc. So yeah. So it says, I'll just take a quick look here before I look at the other cards here, or the last card. It says how many cards you get. Should be 11. I actually never counted it, but they said 11. So let me just check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep. There are 11 cards. That's what they said on the campaign. And there wasn't like a secret bonus card, at least not in my pack. So definitely matches the 11 that they said you're going to get. Snorky says, so Trent, I wish I had the cards. Maybe I should order them, but I was only carrying Isom, I guess. Yeah, I mean, the cards are cool. I mean, if he is truly not really making these anymore, that would be a good reason to get them, right? If they were only exclusive to the first campaign, just being able to get something that is limited edition, that's what I went for. I mean, I'm straight up was like, okay, what are the things that are rare you're not going to be able to get again? Okay, the cards, the concept art book, and of course, I want to just get this. And then the cover B was, the rarest cover, but at the end of the day, it's like, I really wanted the cover that had the first art, like the main high quality art front and back that they had, their premiere piece. So it's one of those things that maybe you'll be able to pick up online on eBay. I already I took a look on eBay already. Maybe we'll pull this up too real quick, but some Ripperverse stuff, and I went through like completed listings, and they were selling well above what it was that they were listed for originally. Yeah, here, I can show you real quick if you want. So if you see here, let me get this big enough you can see it. I'm on eBay right now, and someone listed, not that it's going to sell, but the covers A and B bundle, $1,100. Oh, here's one, right? Isom graphic novel issue 1 cover A, $305, 23 bids. So that's actually being bid on, so it would sell. There's another one up, cover A, unsigned near mint, $100. Signed B, $50, and so forth. So people are listing, and I imagine that was going to happen too. Oh, there you go. There's a Dokumaan trading card set. That's new. That wasn't even there yesterday. I looked it up. So someone is selling it, so you could get it. But I imagine people are going to be buying some to resell, which I was tempted to do, frankly, myself. I really was tempted to do, but at the end of the day, my goal was just to get the stuff that I wanted to do. That is, I wanted for my personal collection. I was like, yeah. But it could have been fun. Could have been fun. So I do know that, some people will say, well, yeah, just because something's listed at a certain price doesn't mean it's selling for that. Obviously, the one that has the bids is being sold. But if I go down here to where'd it go? It should say nope. Where's the there? Sold and completed items. So I'm going to put sold completed items now, and it will show what's been sold already. So sold listings, Isom 120, and then signed bundle AB 200. I'll click off completed. Oh, that's weird. So just those two, I guess. I'll click sold items. Oh, okay, so sold doesn't incorporate that. Okay. So yeah, so obviously some have already sold, and the ones that are being bid up right now will clearly go through, typically, unless they cancel the last second, the latest bidder. But the one that's going cover A 305, that's kind of crazy. So we'll see how these other ones go. But it's pretty clear that people really want to get their hands on these if they missed out for whatever reason. So maybe, or someone wishes that they bought another one so they could get it graded, and then they have a read copy and a graded copy. It's crazy. It's really crazy that there's just so much fanfare so soon all about it, which that part, I guess the part that's not really crazy, it's in terms of like the actuality. I mean, I expected that, but I would say that the part that's crazy for me is just seeing this happen in my lifetime. Like being able to actually watch this level of exit and fandom for supporting Liberty creators, people who are outside the mainstream paradigm, who actually care about individual liberty. That's pretty freaking inspiring. It's pretty cool. So let me see. I'll take a look real quick. All right, Maddie says character super unique. Yeah, they definitely did take their time to like try to design something that's unique and different. So that's good. Nothing was necessarily like, oh, this is too close to an existing character, which DC and Marvel ripped off of each other and had mirroring characters throughout all the years they did stuff. Whatever it's going to be. You know what I mean? Like Doctor Strange and Fate and Solomon Grundy and Hulk and whatnot. I mean, they were always kind of making iterations of each other's characters. So, all right. So this last card here. I'm like, which camera? Oh, I'm going to be in this camera, actually. There we go. Takari, who I actually think, and they even said this in the design book, the concept art book, that this guy was like super uniquely designed. I like his costume and or maybe his outfit, I should say. It's not necessarily a costume. All right, so he's 7 feet tall, also big guy. Birthplace is Mauritania, so something made up. And alongside Valadin, Takari is an ancient man. So again, these are some type of maybe extraterrestrial beings that are ancient, so that maybe they're godlike or something. Who knows? I'm trying to read this clearly from the back, so let's see if I could. There we go. Come on, work with me. Okay. It says, unfortunately, the documentation of his existence is rather inaccurate. He is assumed to be a god of vengeance among those that worship him, but this is not true. So, again, he's not a god, but is he godlike? That's an important question, if they can be confused for it. He currently is the lead guitarist for the band Norfolka, so we know Norfolka is definitely going to be some type of arc. I don't know if that'll be the name of the comic, if they stand alone it, make it a standalone or something like that. But Norfolka could be the name of an independent title, I guess. It says, those who are familiar with his music often consider him as one of the greatest guitarists of all time. He plays notes that shouldn't be possible, and I assume this is related to his ability. So his ability allows him to play music in wild ways. Only in pockets of Africa are they at least knowledgeable of his existence. Again, what they know of them is entirely truthful, which allows him to simply walk among everyone else. How did they simply walk among everyone else if they're 7 feet tall? I mean, that'd be pretty obvious. Like, oh, there's, just a 7 foot tall dude who's jacked. But maybe just more so the fact that they don't know that he is superpowers. His fans assume that his black eyes are contacts, but that clearly isn't the case. Should he decide to showcase his power, I fear for this planet. So if he fears for the planet, that sounds like planet destroying level powers. So he says, whatever he does with his fingers and hands seems to activate various things, but this isn't mere magic. This is something else. Okay. So with all that in mind, now that we've gone through those characters and the information, in the universe, it's pretty clear that the Ripperverse has multiple fronts. It has Earth-based things, especially centered around Texas and what I think appears to be some type of war of secession. They call it war of separation, but it sounds more like the state of Texas has seceded and there was a civil war over it. You have the clear notation that there's some type of extraterrestrial life and they're somehow coming to Earth between Yaira and the North. I always want to say North Africa because it sounds like North Africa combined into Norfolka. So Norfolka band, right? So those characters all seem to allude to that type of extraterrestrial life. We don't know exactly what all they can do and their powers and whatnot, but we do have a sense that the Ripperverse is probably going to expand on those different fronts. It seems like as if, because as he said, he's going to have multiple different titles under the Ripperverse banner. Isom was just the first. So it's yet to be seen, but it could be that Norfolka gets a title. It could be also that Yaira gets a title too. That maybe that crossover was just temporary, and maybe ultimately she ends up. Yaira, that she ends up going elsewhere, and then maybe that becomes its own series. I don't know. It's possible though, just given how everything's been set up. So hopefully that is inspiring and helpful for food for thought, especially if you unfortunately were not able to get those cards or the concept art book. Hopefully that helps inform a little bit more about the universe, because all these details would not be known just from the comic alone. So even if you read the comic and you got whatever, covers, they're all the same, but the different covers, it doesn't matter. You wouldn't know those specific details unless you got the cards and or the concept book, which the concept book does, I think, cover a bit of what's on the cards too, but there's some differences. And I think that these cards are probably the most comprehensive. And I can say that because, well, I have all three things. I have the comic, I have the concept art book, and I have the cards. So I know, and I've read them all. So I know that the cards give the most detail about the universe, and really that's where you'd want to know, what's going on. Oh, and on that note of what's going on, good to see Igor's hanging out real quick. Igor is actually one of the artists for Ripperverse. So if you didn't know that, he is awesome. And he, of course, did that beautiful back cover. And I didn't even know this, but until he mentioned it, but they I gotta find this in here because it's super cool. Where is it? There was an art piece in here that brought a smile to my face that he didn't even know it made it into the final cut. So let's see here. Oh, actually, I'm going to show this first. So there's Norfolka, right? So you can see there in the comic. So clearly set up like it could be its own, standalone comic. And then there. We are not done quite yet. Beautiful with the taxationist theft hat. That's awesome. So I'm super excited for what's going to come next in the series. I think that they did a good job of laying down the foundations to the comic without giving too much away. Like, because you don't want to give so much away that you're like, well, there's the whole thing. I don't, what else is there to learn or to know or to unravel? They did enough where they set up some character development. They set up some conflicts. They set up some basic information about who has kind of, somewhat some of their powers, but without too much detail. And they left it off on a note where you're kind of wondering, okay, well, what's going to happen next, right? So that's a good idea. I think that whenever you have a series like that, you definitely want to have, and you're doing your first big introduction, you want to have something that gets people to wonder what the next mystery unveiling is. So take a look here too. Oh yeah, Brad says, yes, they do. Isom 2 is going to be so good. Yeah, exactly. I think that now that they have it set up this way, I think that the next stages will probably have a lot more intriguing action and character conflict, because I think that's always a tough thing to balance too when you're first writing a story. And I know this firsthand, writing Voluntarist, is you need to have enough dialogue that you are actually getting a sense of the characters and getting a sense of their motives and kind of, what makes them tick. But obviously you need the action too, because you don't just want dialogue. Typically in your at least superhero genre, a big part of that is like feats of strength and also crazy situations. So balancing that, having good dialogue that gets the characters developed, but then also some cool action. So they did do a bit of that with some of the fight scenes in Isom, and I think that if they continue to push those high level dynamic action scenes and up the ante with it in terms of the battle and the angles, I think that it's going to be very satisfying to see when they actually do even more dynamic poses and more action stuff like that. So Night Shift says, well, I was just watching a video review about the series. Yeah. So, I mean, this is it. You're here, you're on the ground floor with everybody, starting off on this series. So that's why for me, I'm probably going to be actively doing reviews and updates and talking about fan theory as it goes through, because for me, I'm just like, okay, perfect. I could actually be at the ground level of this whole new universe and be able to talk about this. And I have some personal history and background with the creator that lets me be able to talk a little bit more about some of these nuanced details and think through how some personal life experiences might tie to the story, and also be able to kind of think through what might be coming next based on everything that I've seen and know and have seen in development. So I think that will be a lot of fun to be able to actually see it on the ground floor and get to actually walk through the excitement of a brand new series, challenging the status quo. I say status specifically, the status quo, and getting people to finally exit out of the mainstream woke nonsense. It's just gone absolutely down the tubes. The amount of woke statist garbage that they just keep doing in the mainstream, from Netflix to Amazon to DC to Marvel, even Image. It's just, it gets really boring when you're just like, oh, here's the same story up, just now everybody's a different color or gay, whatever. It's like there's no risk they can take. They can't take any risk in being edgy. And I think that's maybe in some ways why some of the better shows that are even out there are taking from stories that were written when you could still be pretty edgy. Like even The Boys and Invincible, which I've read both series. I've read all 70 Boys. I've read all the trade paperbacks of Invincible. So I'm familiar with both those series, and they're definitely a lot more edgy than what a lot, you might see in DC or Marvel these days in terms of the language, dialogue, and topics. But I think that's what people want. People want something that has a little bit more, I guess you could say, dramatic character dialogue where the conflict can get a bit philosophical. You talk about some real world issues in the process, and also kind of, highlight really bad actors and then bringing justice to those actors. I think that's something that people want. They don't just simply want the whole, oh, there's a bad guy and the villain and he's goofy. Oh, and now they're locked up back in Arkham or whatever, and they'll get out next issue. It's, that kind of gets dry after a while. And I think that Eric July is able to take on some issues that they won't touch. And of course, I'm able to take on the issues that nobody else will touch with Voluntarius, because I have not beholden to anybody in my comic series. I get to just do whatever I want. And I get to talk about all like the different real world issues, with government, mass murder, spying, and other things like that, and integrate it into the story in a way that's like, makes you really go and like look up what's going on in the world. So, that I just think that it's great. I think it's great that we can finally have some creative content out there that's both refreshing, unique, and causes people to actually think seriously about their lives and philosophy and ethics and what's going on in the world. Because I don't think that you have to check your brain at the door. You know what I mean? There's a difference between having those discussions and thinking about what it is, that matters in life and ethics and philosophy, and just having pure, SJW woke diatribes. Like, that's not philosophical, especially if there's no pushback on it, right? If you want to have a good story, you need to have discourse. You need to be able to say what the pros and cons are and what's right or wrong and where the weaknesses, in a philosophy, or the strengths. You can't just have like that one-way preachiness. Otherwise it gets boring, right? And it sounds more like a political document than something that is actually entertaining and engaging with character development, but also has some philosophical political themes that might make you think about the world in a deeper way. I think that's much more desirable, than the just, oh, if you don't agree with with this particular, ideology, then you're a bigot. You know what I mean? That's just it. It's just, oh, you're a bigot, you're a racist, whatever. That's not philosophical. That's not getting into character development at all, and like where someone came from and why and what they think, and actually dissecting what's going on. So I think that's it's a real good thing that we're finally getting to change for the better with a very successful series. And it's just nothing but inspiring to me. And I hope it really does inspire everybody else who's in the creative space to keep working at it and to not pander or cater to the mainstream sentiments or norms that, and I say mainstream, not in true popularity, mainstream in terms of just corporate, state collaborated projects, where basically the government's helping to fund or seed these things that are promoting, the deep state, the CIA, and then of course democratic socialism and all this other stuff as their like number one goal is this, democratic socialism, SJW wokeness thing that's being roped into every single major movie, show, whatever, animation, and that's too why many people are like go to anime too, because they're like, yeah, I'm gonna go watch anime because anime is way better than this. I mean, a lot of animes have great philosophical discourse in the process without all the woke nonsense, stuff like that. I think like Parasite is a good one that, is really thought provoking and entertaining, engaging that way. I could think of One Piece, Full Metal Alchemist, Attack on Titan. I think all of those to some extent have commentary on the nature of war and government. Especially when you think of Attack on Titan, everybody being used as pawns, or if you think about One Piece and the world government and then them oppressing people and stuff like that. There are great shows out there that are both entertaining, engaging, but also have philosophical discourse. And I think that's what people really actually want, is they want the entertainment to be mixed with good philosophical discourse, not just browbeating, calling you names. It's, and basically saying, oh, you're stupid, you're a, whatever bigot, just because you don't immediately jump on and agree with me kind of thing. So Gray Pliskin says that's the most excited about Isom. No politics, agenda pushing, just a good old comic story. Right. Yeah. I mean, it is. I think that though, one thing that I would say for myself is that I don't think that the idea of politics and comics necessarily are separated. I think that every single comic book series, whether you like it or not, always has something political with it, philosophical, because there has to be, right? Whatever makes right or wrong for the protagonist is clearly going to be what sets the tone, right? Whatever is perceived as good or is left unchallenged is going to be the tone of the comic. Just like, if Superman is stopping someone because they're breaking a car, well, that's automatically setting this norm that, oh, breaking somebody's car is wrong, right? You're always going to have some type of political, philosophical tone to something in terms of what's seen as right or wrong. And it's just more and more in the mainstream becoming the case that they are writing these stories in a way to make it that if your feelings are hurt, the words are equal to violence. That's really, I would say, one of the biggest themes that I've seen. Like a good example that sticks in my mind is the Marvel movie, Captain Marvel. She is like whistled at by some guy in the movie, like, kind of just hit on, not touched or anything, that just some guy whistling at her who's a biker. And then she goes and steals his bike. Right. So in that instance, with Captain Marvel, it's communicating this idea that, oh, just because someone is using words you don't like, or, oh, maybe they're like, being a little bit too aggressive with hitting on you, that justifies violence. And I would say that theme has been consistent in most of your mainstream movies of late. The idea of equating words alone with violence and saying, oh, okay, well, if someone makes you uncomfortable, or someone just says something that you don't like, you think they're being bigoted or something, well, violence to words is acceptable. That is definitely a mainstream norm that is being promoted across the board. I even just saw it recently when I finished watching the Dahmer show. There was a girl who smacks this kid's camera, who's taking a picture outside of, the apartment where Dahmer killed people. And it was because she didn't like that they were making light of the murders. But these kids were just taking pictures outside on a public sidewalk. So they weren't doing anything that was illegal. They weren't violating property rights, but she smashed it, and they make it seem like as if she's justified for doing that. And they also later do talk about like someone making a comic book of Dahmer and then saying like, oh, we should sue him. Like, how do they have a right to be able to speak about this? You know what I mean? And to make a comic book, like literally this idea of like, oh, okay, if someone says or draws something that you don't like, violence is the answer. And it's really scary how messed up that is. And Slender 7 Last says, it's only going to keep getting bigger and better from here on out. Trust that. Yes. So again, another person on the Ripperverse team here. Good to see you. Absolutely. It is just getting bigger and better from here on out. Absolutely. I think more and more people are just naturally going to be drawn to this, and they're going to say, oh, okay, I can finally exit. There's something there for me. And that's what I'm hoping is being accomplished right now. I think that Ripperverse is creating that start to it. I think that's that groundswell. And then I think there's going to be a number of other creators in the same space kind of thing, where it's like Ripperverse will almost have like that synchronicity with other stuff. Just like you go to the movies and you see, oh, okay, I went and I watched, this Marvel movie. Oh, and I went to go watch a DC movie, right? There's going to be constant streams of content now where people are going to start aggregating a number of creators in the space who become kind of the total package substitute, right? That's what's going to happen, in my opinion. I think that Ripperverse is kind of like that. I think the biggest, pretty much, as far as I've seen in terms of success, kind of lead in that comic book space. There are others who are trying to do that, in other spaces. When I think of like Angel Video and what they did with Tuttle Twins and the animation, other movies, or Daily Wire trying to do their own movies. Again, will it be fully successful? Maybe. I think Tuttle Twins has a better chance than others. But I think Ripperverse is definitely in the success zone. I think that they are official. They're officially going to be solidified at this point as going into this whole next century as being the lead alternative comic book platform, kind of pioneering that way for now. And as much as, Detective Comics was in the 20th century, right? You have at the turn of the century something new and exciting be developed, and then that leads the way for the next 100 years. I think that Ripperverse is going to be that paving the way, and there's others who are going to be in that circle, just like there's other comic book major publishers out there besides DC and Marvel. There's Image, there's Dark Horse, and there's a bunch of smaller publishers. I think that circle is going to rise up too, and then people are going to have a total solutions package there, essentially, where they're going to be able to replace all of the nonsense that's coming out of the mainstream, right? You're going to be able to say, oh, okay, I don't even feel a lack or a desire to go back to whatever is coming out from Marvel or DC or Disney or whatever, because it's going to just be such a wide array of products and offerings in the market that you just don't even need it anymore. It's like you don't even think about it. You're like, oh yeah, I don't. Whatever. You'd be like, oh yeah, I just got the latest issue of Ripperverse. Oh, Cyberfrog just had a new animated movie. Whatever. Voluntarius just came with trade paperback or something. It's going to be that kind of thing where you're going to be able to be like, oh, okay, I got a full suite of interesting, exciting things that don't require me to go back, to the major corporate businesses that are connected chronally with the government to try to run that money in a way that is meant to basically directly oppress you. So. Igor here says, and that's why it's so important to have stuff like you and Eric does, because we need to have a counterculture what's already established. Exactly. Right. It's very easy to say there's something wrong. It's very hard to build an exit, right? Everybody knows that the current paradigm is definitely not sustainable in terms of what's being done toward the fan base, right? They're just destroying the history and the characters that's been built. They're using their funding to lobby for things that are counter to a free society, and it's just not good. It's not good at all. And as Nathan Klein here says, a parallel economy. Exactly. It's going to become, and I wouldn't even say a parallel economy for long, because eventually it's going to just become the new mainstream. I mean, there's going to be a tipping point at some point where the support for those alternatives starts to become so large that you can't even call it alternative anymore, because then Ripperverse becomes the mainstream, and so on and so forth. I think it is going to eventually come to a head in some way. Just once the infrastructure is there, that the content offering is regular and routine enough, right? That's really what you need to be sustainable. Is you need something that is routine and regular enough, alongside other offerings that people sort of say, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to drop my subscription to X, Y, and Z other services. I'm going to just, switch on over. So I think we're almost there. Josh says, I just hope it gets big enough to have animated series or games. Oh, yeah, I mean, definitely. And that was a question, too, that I've been wondering, is because he raised so much in the first round, it is theoretically possible to even have like an animated pilot, out of that. But I think it would be much, wiser to develop the universe a lot more before going with the animated pilot, because doing an animated pilot these days is easily running you in the $500,000 to $1 million mark. So we're talking about making an animation that maybe isn't close to an hour long. And the closer you get to an hour, the closer it's probably to $1 million for sure. Definitely, at least. And that's assuming that you're being, somewhat judicious about getting an offshore company, a decent company, but, you're probably hiring out of Philippines or Indonesia or something like that, where you can get it done more reasonably. But that, it's not cheap. It's not cheap to do an animated series. But, whenever you're creating, one of the things that's tough for creators is staying focused on your main vision. And that's a challenge for anybody, right? Because it's easy to be like, oh, I could do this, I could do that, like I could do all these different things. And it's like, whoa, hold on. Remember what your creative focus is. What were you trying to do in the first place, right? If you're trying to do a comic book series, you want to keep going with that until it's successful enough, you have enough lore built that it justifies creating the animated series. But I think, I seriously think that if he keeps this up for a few years, even just 2-3 years, I could see him being able to justify an animated pilot. And if he did it, maybe even like what they did for Tuttle Twins, where they do the investor model or something like that, he might be able to actually raise that capital specifically for an animated pilot, and reward people, buying into it. I thought Tuttle Twins did that very successfully. And I think that that's a different kind of model, because in that model, it very much is the creator backed, version of participation. It's not just like, oh, I just have 1 or 2 executive producers. It's like, no, with the wider community, you're having thousands and thousands of people buy into your show and support it, because much more decentralized. So yeah. Yeah. So, Slender Seven Last says, I'm not the warehouse. Can't say when the comic's coming, but it's on its way along with his. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people don't realize that there's a lot of comics bought on the Ripperverse. I mean, the amount of orders is absolutely insane. I mean, it's, fulfilling what is something in the 40 to 50,000 arena, as far as we know. Some of those might be bundled. So, obviously there could be other things that have, gone on sits at times, so because more orders can come in after the fact, but they're just a process later. So there's just so many things going on with the campaign and the ship. I mean, I'm personally impressed that they were able to get out as many as they did so quickly, because I know Eric was not expecting it to be that level of big. I do know, is that he was not expecting it to be as successful as it was. He was expecting success, absolutely. He was expecting to make back what he put in and then some, but I don't think that he was psychologically prepared for how successful it was. And he had to adapt very quickly to get in a team to be like, oh, okay, I got to go hire a bunch of people to get this done, because packing that many orders is a nightmare. And you need a solid team of people to, get those all wrapped up together. It is no joke. I mean, I do fulfillment for my own self for a lot of my campaigns. And even that's very tedious, having to do all the different, comic book wrappings and the thank you letters and putting in extras and blah, blah, and shipping it out. It's no easy task. Even if you have like a labels printer or something like that, where you can maybe, get it automatically printed through software, it still takes a lot of time to put that all together. So it's a good thing that Eric was planning to ship out things a little bit later, so that he actually had the time to get the team together that he needed to fulfill it, because that was probably like oh, okay, it's going to be like that moment, which is a good problem to have. It's always a good problem to have when you have so many orders. And you're like, okay, well, time to make everybody full time, and we got to get this going. So, yeah, no rush, quality over quantity. Yeah, I mean, and the thing was with the comic, they were already made. So he, as he said, he had already, basically had everything done. So there wasn't much that he needed to do in terms of the inventory, other than just, take it out and then repackage it for the bundles and put it together. But from what I, have seen with this, the quality is great. I mean, the ink on it is extremely glossy, well defined. It doesn't look faded. The pages are very thick. It's definitely a quality product. And I have quite a few different books, you could say, that are of this genre. Like I have Watchmen, and I have a few other, trade paperbacks. And this is up there in modern quality of being, you could say, like a magazine level, like feel, like really thick pages, really high gloss colors. It's not like old school comics like that where it's like papery or anything like that. No, it's a quality made modern, maybe 80 pound weight at least paper, maybe higher. So it's nothing that you're gonna be shy about or ashamed of. It's some good stuff. So it says he needs to keep the momentum going though. No, I mean, well, momentum here, the main thing for momentum, that I think is mostly now his core about what he's going to do is the next issue in the future releases. As he said, and I agree with him. He said, I don't think I'm going to have the same level of funds raised the second round. I agree. And there's many factors that go into that. One of which is some of the people who bought in were just doing it because they wanted to see him succeed. That's just a fact. There's some people who bought Ripperverse simply because, not that they were necessarily big time comic fans, but they're like, I love his work. He's impacted me. I just want to support him. Right. And then that might go away. There's the economic stuff where obviously if economic times are tough, people might not have as much money to spend. Also true. There will be a small contingency. I don't think it'll be that big personally, but it's just bound to happen, right? Some people will read it and then be like, oh, okay, I'm not interested. That happens. I think it will probably be very small, close to none, but it's something to be aware of. I estimate that, though, it's quite plausible based on the numbers that I'm seeing, that he will have at least 10,000 hardcore fans that will stick, though. That's my personal estimate, is that at least out of this first campaign, there will probably be at least 10,000 of those purchasers who are going to be diehards. And it's like every single issue they will pick up kind of thing. And if you have 10,000 diehards, you're good to go. I mean, that's easily a $500,000 a year company right there in terms of net profit. If you have that many, I would estimate. So that's why I think that with Ripperverse, it's here to stay. He has the minimum buy-in needed to make the company sustainable, and of course, after that, then it's just going to be up to him to grow that into something that has international recognition. I think in terms of like true, like what you have today with Marvel, DC global fandom, and that's going to be just the regular old going and tabling at conventions. Maybe doing some talks and speaking engagements, getting some news coverage in other places. It's not very hard for him to do, I don't think, because he has the resources and tools. He already has the history. It's not new. He's used to doing all kinds of speaking engagements and shows. So if he goes out there and does a little bit of brand ambassadoring, going out there and whatever, doing some signings, doing some tablings, doing some Comic-Con talks at different places, wherever he can get in, I think that he can expand the Ripperverse footprint and take it to the next level. I think, that's going to be where we get that next level of growth. That's what he said. So they say, hey, what do I do right? Last I heard, their Photoshop warehouse takes fake books. Jack has a one printed color copy, right? It's so that to me was so ridiculous. Like, I don't know, how dumb would people have to be like, okay, this guy is just gonna, not print out tens of thousands of people's stuff that he's promising and put himself out there and so publicly and with all his information out there, in terms of finding him. And just scam everybody. That makes no sense. Like, you would be so screwed if he actually did that. He would be so screwed. I mean, he would have to be like disappearing overnight into something, and it's not that easy. So, and he has a wife, and all his stuff established, and he has band members. There is absolutely no legitimate reason, even for the most skeptical person, to think that he wasn't gonna deliver on this. It's like, no, duh. Of course, it's happening. Like, this is so obvious. But It's only the people who were disingenuous and were trying to spread lies and are just making up anything they could about him to try to detract from it that we're really trying to push out there. But I do say it is a lot of fun to laugh at those idiots and those SJW commies who try to make it seem like as if this wasn't going to materialize. I mean, that is a lot of fun to show in their face. No, everything you thought and everything you said was a lie, obviously. So. And it seems here a few of the people are getting theirs in. Says, William, mine just shipped yesterday. Nathan said mine will arrive today, supposedly. So great. And Brad says, of course, you make quality America, no stuff. Ain't no joke making stuff in America. It's going to cost you. Yeah, well, making stuff in America is expensive. I'll tell you that. I make my comics are made in America. So they are a little bit more expensive, but they're also very high quality. Like some of the most premium paper and gloss from where I do. So. And this is good too. I don't know if I didn't hear whether it was made in America. I guess someone can tell me if it was. A lot of times you just, sometimes we print it in America, right? You just order the paper from overseas and then they do the printing here. A lot, and ink too, right? Ink is an international product, so you can get that from anywhere. So, yeah. And Nathan says here, he's good at monetizing haters. Right, exactly. I think that's a brilliant thing too, is just to show when someone is being a true hater, not offering legitimate criticism or something like that. When someone's just literally saying anything they can, any lie they can, you show that to light so that everybody can see, hey, this is false, and then just destroy their credibility right there and then, right? That's because it needs to be done. When someone makes those kind of outright lies about your business like that, you just got to be like, okay, well, here, take a look, everybody, and now remember them when you get your book. And that was that. So, Godable Gamer says Ripperverse is a great book. Yeah. I think it's only going to get even better from here too. I think that from what I've seen so far too, I think that it was kind of like Eric July moving with trepidation. I think that he was conservative in making this book. And when I say conservative, I mean kind of just keeping it enough, with the action dialogue that gets you intrigued, but without spilling the beans on everything, right? Without overloading you and trying to get everything you can in at once. I thought that it was, again, conservative in that way of saying that he carefully selected the things that you needed to know to get you hooked to move forward without being a spoiler about everything and feeling like, oh, I got to get everything into this book of all the characters and all that stuff. Because again, if you just try to stuff it in there and it ends up not making sense or doesn't have good continuity, then you're just hurting your own book, right? You want to make sure that what you write at least makes sense and has good cohesion and the continuity makes sense with the characters and development. Because then otherwise you go back and that was a waste putting this character in here sooner just to try to get them to, to be there, right? It's not a good idea. You want to make sure that whatever you put in there makes sense with the chronology and gets people to actually want to know what happens next. So. All right. Oh, and apparently he says he made his book in America. So yeah, maybe it was printed in America or something like that. I'm not sure the specifics personally. I don't care one way or the other. You can make your book wherever. I don't care. The question is it quality? Is it going to hold up? Is the binding good? Are the colors really popping out? The pages they feel well constructed, not just going to rip. And all that was met as far as I'm concerned. The print quality on this is absolutely top notch. It was very well made, and the choice in the printing absolutely great. Whoever they used, I don't know who they use. I'd recommend it. It looks great. So personally, I use Kablam, so I'm a big Kablam fan. So Kablam does everything from comic book printing to manga style printing to magazine to the square bound printing. They do it all there, and they're also American, a little bit higher price, but the quality is also a step above too. So, okay, so there you go. So Slider 7 Last says that's why it's top quality, why it has its price. It's all American made, right? If you do make it in America instead of and some people do. Again, if you want to do it, I don't care, but you can bulk order in China and get it shipped over, stuff like that. But if you get it made in America, a lot of times it is true. I would say my experience of the made in America printers, they tend to be a bit higher quality on the print. And I think it's because they have to justify it, right? If you're going to have to pay a higher price anyway, then it's like, okay, well, then let's just try to make sure that the quality is that next level. So at least if you're like, oh, I'm going to pay more, well, at least the quality is, you're getting what you pay for, right? And that's ultimately what you want, is you want something that's good enough that makes you say, okay, well, I spent more money, but the quality. So, okay, I agree with that philosophy, and that's where I set myself to as well. My goal is first and foremost is make sure that the comic is itself quality. I rather would have it be a little more pricey and then it be something good than be like, oh, look, I saved $1 on every comic, but it's some garbage, paper from China. It's not cut well, or the ink is not very bright and doesn't really pop out. I don't want that. I want high gloss ink, colors that really pop out, pages that feel really strong to the touch, that, are like, feel really good, so. It's letter says last says, otherwise it'd have to have toilet paper as pages were made. Well, the other big places. Yeah. I mean, I've seen crappy comics and I've seen good comics. So at the end of the day, I would say, even if a fan, was a little bit unhappy of the price being a little bit higher, I don't think that anybody, when they get the comic in hand, then goes and is upset about it. And that's actually, I think, an important thing for business too, is that at the end of the day, even if it's a little higher and someone first like, it's a little high. Yeah, well, guess what? When they get the comic in their hands and they read like, oh, okay, actually that was worth it, right? You want the experience of someone saying when they receive the product, oh, wow, that was worth every penny, right? You don't want them to get like, oh, I saved $1 in the comic, but it's garbage, right? You want something that's impressive. And I think that works so long term, right? If you get people who are accustomed to thinking about the fact that, if they're spending a little bit higher, they're getting a better quality product. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like, that's what you want. You want people who want to have some quality product, not just people who are just like, oh, well, I want to save like $2 or $5 on this. Why is it so high? It's like, well, then they're going to nickel and dime you the rest of the way. There's no point. You want people who actually appreciate the fact that you have something that's not just a great story, but it's itself like a beautiful art piece, something that you want to keep on the shelf or put up in a display, like in a frame or something like that, whatever it is. I have, both. I have things on the shelf. I have things in display. You want something that makes someone, proud. Kind of like, I would say, yeah. Again, always shout out to Igor for his artwork on my cover, my book. So glad we were able to work on this before Ripperverse really took a lot of his time up, which again, congratulations. That's super awesome. But I'm just still thankful that I was able to get this done with you. Because again, when you have quality artwork and you have a good, presentation, right? Then what you make transcends what's inside, right? Obviously the stuff in here is good, but it's also nice to have something that is itself a beautiful piece of art that makes people want to display it, right? You want something that makes people actually want to have it and keep it as a keepsake, and not just like, oh, okay, I read it here, I'll just donate it or throw it away or whatever. And I think that's the same thing with comic books. You want something that is so well made and beautiful that people treat it as art, right? It transcends the comic book words. It becomes something that like is inspiring art for you. Like you just like looking at it, or you like sometimes, putting it up on the shelf, as part of a bigger collection, and just kind of getting some excitement or inspiration from seeing things that you really love. So yeah. All right. I am going to wrap it up here real quick, but so it said, oh God, Gamer says, where is your partner in crime? She's in a meeting. So we both do things other than just Liberty stuff all the time. We have other businesses and things like that we deal with, which is part of how we're able to do what we do is because we work really hard otherwise. But she might be doing a little show with me at some point in the future. We want to talk to some of the people who were affected by Hurricane Ian. Some people who we're friends with had some pretty big damage. And so we're hoping to see if we can talk to them, do a little show with them, and do a little fundraiser specifically for them. So hopefully they'll get to that. They're still just getting their stuff together. They haven't had a chance to like get better internet and get, opportunity to maybe make a support page for them just to help them out, because they, houses are flooded. I know that people lost cars and other stuff like that. So we're going to talk to those people. So, all right. Thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out, talking a little bit about the Ripperverse, talking about the Dokumaan cards, and thinking about what the universe is going to ultimately have in it and what kind of characters will be developed. So, and I really appreciate seeing everybody who's also working on the Ripperverse here hanging out. Thank you guys so much, Igor and Buddy here coming on out to talk. So, all right, I will talk to y'all. I'm not sure when I'll do another stream, but it'll be soon enough. You'll see. All right. Take care, everybody.
Zero State with Jack Lloyd.